Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. This is the Clutter Fairy Weekly for December 6th, 2022. I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gayle Goddard, certified professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hi, everybody. The Clutter Fairy Weekly is the webcast and podcast that digs deep into the clutter that piles up between you and the life you want to be living. We explore the habits and behaviors that lead to clutter, and we suggest strategies to slow the accumulation, reduce the collection, and comfortably manage the stuff we decide to keep. And I want to insert right here that one of the comments on one of the YouTube videos recently said that the people that are living together in the house say to each other, "We're not comfortably managing the stuff we've decided to keep."
Nice.
as a signal to each other that there's something that they need to work on. So I appreciate that you have adopted our mantra into your life. Thanks for telling us about it.
We want to let anyone who's new to our Zoom meeting know that you can share your comments and questions via the chat feature, and I'll try to make sure Gayle gets to them before we move on to another topic. You can also use the raise hand feature if you want to let us know that you'd like to ask a question or make a comment yourself via audio or video. We're also streaming live on Facebook, and so you can share your questions and comments there, and I'll relay them to Gayle. We're going to start by revisiting last week's weekly tittle, which was called Reconnect to Your Motivation. The assignment was to strengthen the connection between your motivations and your process of decluttering. We'd love to hear from our participants in Zoom and Facebook who shared their who explored their organizing motivations this week. Please let us know in the comments. Marsh shared her tittle story in a comment on our website. Marsh said, "Designating 2 hours max over weekend just passed, I chose a small piece of a much larger project to declutter my main vehicle of residual items left behind from travels with my beloved cat, Sis. Honestly reflecting and writing on the why of my reasons simply created my ability to just start. As I wrote down the mindful steps to follow, focusing and supporting each decision I made in what to keep, throw, or donate forward, the actual emotional effect became astoundingly easy, for I began to smile handling her toys and cry as I decluttered the space holding her travel bed and litter box. By working within this powerful tittle, I honored the deep loss event first, then became re-energized to drag my garbage can into the carport to get the whole vehicle done. My total time was 3 hours on Sunday afternoon. Sad mood to feeling privileged and successful as it snowed around me. Beautiful."
Thanks so much, Marge, for sharing that with us. You've shown us with each of the bullet points of the tittle here, including introducing how your mood changed as you worked on and then completed your tasks, that you went from a sad mood to feeling privileged and successful, which is wonderful. It must have been cold out there working on the car in the snow, but you got it done and you reached a peaceful place in the end. So congratulations on getting it done and facing that emotional block and climbing over it, and then stretching beyond what you originally committed to. It just doing, like, you picked the small part, declutter the cat part of the car, but then you went and did the whole car. And so the great thing that you got tapped into your motivation there again and kept going and got to the whole car done, which is wonderful. So congrats. I'm clapping for you.
Jane shared a comment from a prior tittle. "I often remind myself of my goal to have a comfortable, safe home. That goal motivates me a lot."
Isn't that awesome? That's wonderful. Just being able to circle back and go, what I really want here is a peaceful home, a comfortable home. You have a vision in your head of what you want, and you're reminding yourself often. That's wonderful. I'm glad that works. Good for you.
Okay, we may come back to the discussion of last week's tittle if more comments come in, but let's go right to our main topic.
Okay.
Life-changing events can disrupt our efforts to get or remain organized. We may face unexpected trauma, such as a natural disaster, a job loss, or the death of a loved one, or find ourselves having to adjust to a new family member, a divorce, a cross-country move, etc. Each major life event presents a unique set of organizing challenges. Today, we're going to discuss how to face the special clutter issues that arise around life's major milestones.
When I first meet a new client, they're anxious to tell me their clutter story. It feels important to them to explain what created the clutter we're looking at in their space. And there's always a lot of, I wouldn't normally be like this, but, and
Right.
very often that story includes a major life change or crisis. They tell me that they got divorced, or their child got married, or they were in an accident. A client recently told me that one of their children and their mother died in the same year. Of course, you'd lose control of your stuff after that. Those big life moments can leave a trail of clutter as we struggle to adjust to the changes that are happening. So we're going to talk about a few of those events and the project you have to face in that moment when those things happen. So let's check in on the week's survey results where you shared the life events that have impacted your household. So our question about life experiences and percentage, like how many of these have you experienced? Here's the situations that our audience most commonly faced. Death of the parent, 73% of the survey respondents have experienced death of the parent. 57% have experienced retirement. 55% pregnancy, birth, or adoption of a child. Those are all major things. 49.
They also say a lot about the demographics of our audience.
Right, exactly. 49% have chronic pain in their life that they're dealing with. 48% have a child that's left the nest, that's launched themselves from the house. 47% have experienced a home renovation during which you lived in the house. Gag me with a spoon. That just is the worst torture ever. And a lot of times I get calls around that process, trying to prep for a reno or trying to recover from a reno afterwards. 41% have experienced a long distance move. So moving not, locally, but over state lines, probably. 40% have experienced divorce or separation. And also 40% have experienced a serious illness. Very disruptive. Serious illnesses are very disruptive. 39% have downsized their home, and 37% have been a caretaker for someone in your home. So that's at least a third of the people, more than a third, have had to be the caretaker for somebody living in their house. And so that's certainly a common experience amongst you all. The average respondent checked 9 life experiences from the list. So if you imagine going that big list of experiences and you've checked 9 of them, that's a lot of things that have been major shifts in your environment you've had to adjust for in the house. For each of the situations we included, at least one person ticked the box, except for a big lottery win. Apparently, we're not very lucky, and so nobody won the lottery in our survey.
Or anyone who did win the lottery is now in Tahiti and does not have a good Zoom connection.
It's not worried about the clutter anymore.
Right?
Oh, that's so funny. But I thought it was very telling that at least every one of the options that we created as a life experience, they all got checked at least once. And of course, most of them way more times than that.
Well, and someone in the comments expressed curiosity about incarceration, which I put on the list thinking it might be a little bit of a long shot, but 2 people actually responded that has been someone in their household has experienced that.
So we all have our life experiences out there. Lots of the respondents used the other option in order to mention things that we hadn't thought of. And that included the pandemic got listed, bed bugs. Oh my gosh, I should have thought of that. You're right. Loss of a pregnancy. That's a trigger for people. Loss of a pet. I'm not sure how we admitted that one. Oh
my gosh, I know.
Right. Like we all have pets. I don't know how we missed that one. We send our condolences to Margaret, who lost her 16-year-old dog last week. We're so sorry, Margaret. The last one that got added in was toxic material that had to be removed from the home. And I'm thinking in particular, like black mold, but then there may be like asbestos or some other kind of toxic chemical that has to be taken out of the house. That would be super disruptive and a problem. So thanks for adding the other life events that we didn't come up with in our strategy and our thought processes. We appreciate it. In response to our essay question about events that impacted clutter, here are a couple of typical replies. Paula shared, my late husband had very serious health issues that completely disrupted the house for 2 years. All I could focus on during that time and the next couple of years after his death was what needed to be done in the next minute, hour, or day. What the house looked like was an afterthought. Of course, it's always an afterthought when something else is happening that's bigger. And an anonymous user had this to say: a romantic partner moving into an existing living situation at post basement flooding as well. So they moved in together after the house had the basement flood. And it made it really tough in many ways, including fitting all of our stuff together in a space that was reduced by the flood damage. Things were tight and messy and hard to manage, and my partner didn't feel like part of the household, just wedged into the existing space. I recognize that. For our question about people or ideas that influenced our thinking or behavior around clutter, here are a couple of our favorite responses. Kathy said, I have a friend who had a difficult time decluttering prior to a move. She packed and moved a storage container of things that she really didn't need. She's now trying to declutter in her new home. This has challenged me to declutter now in preparation for a move 2 years in the future. Good on you, Kathy. That's a good lesson to learn. I'm proud of you because your future self will be very happy that you did this now. And Becky had this to say: the Clutter Fairy has helped me to identify that I do have some emotional connection to items and how to let go of some things. I started decluttering more than 2 years ago while listening to her videos on YouTube. My home is not quite clean and organized as well as I would like, but it's slowly getting there. Yay. Good for you. I'm glad that it's going so well. Thank you for watching the videos, and I'm glad it's being helpful. As you can see by these responses, we all face the life events that disrupt our households and generate organizing issues. We can start the discussion first with unexpected events, and accidents are the first on the list. When you start your day, your to-do list doesn't say trip and fall and break your foot. You planned your day to accomplish a whole list of things besides that, and an injury can change your calendar significantly for some time. Instead of what you plan to do, you have to go to doctors and PT every week. You physically can't handle your usual tasks, and you have to organize around new circumstances instead. So unexpected events, big or small, change the game plan from that moment forward. It requires you to pivot and throw out the old plan, the old routines, the old processes, and make a new plan based on the new circumstances. It doesn't matter if you want to change anything. Life isn't giving you a choice. So one way to cope is to think about these potential events and make some plans for them now, so you can be forearmed when something in life throws you a curveball. For example, an accident or a serious illness, like our previous viewer remarked on in the survey. Coping with redesigning your day is hard when you're in pain or stuck on the side of the road because you've wrecked the car or you're in the ER. My first piece of advice is to bail on plans right away. You're going to want to keep everything rolling as planned, but you're now at the mercy of doctors or the police or tow truck drivers. It's best to place your immediate energy into warning others that your appointments need to be rescheduled. It's a courtesy to them to know as soon as possible that you're changing their plans, but it's also a kindness to yourself to clear the decks so that you can deal with what's happening now. Err on the side of caution and cancel out farther than you think you'll need. It's better that you call someone to say you're back early than it is to call and say you have to cancel again. You also want to respect your need for time to heal. And that was my biggest issue when I hurt my fingers a few years ago. It seemed like such a minor injury, but it was so disruptive to me physically because I couldn't use my hand correctly. And it made doing anything in the house or going to see any of my clients impossible. And you don't realize, you think it's minor and you should just be able to like go get treatment and then the next day you'll be fine. Yeah, that's not really what happens. So you need to plan for giving yourself enough space to recover. Death of a parent's on this list. This tragic event triggers a dismantling of your parents' life and all their belongings. It's a very large project to manage, and it's the worst time of your life to have to do it. You may have to suddenly settle your parent that's living in a new location or take over the care of the pets. If your parents own their home outright, some of the pressure is off to deal with everything immediately, but if there's a mortgage or a rent payment to be covered, the timeline to manage that project must be maybe much shorter. You can partially plan for this project in advance by talking with your parents. They can help by starting to let go of stuff now and giving you instructions about what to do with the pets and the keepsakes and the valuables. However, if your parents refuse to discuss the inevitable at all, as some parents do, some people don't want to talk about their inevitable passing, then you can do some research yourself now about service providers that you'll likely need later when something happens. You can look at the organizers that are available and moving companies, find the local charities around their house where you're going to be donating things, research pet rescue organizations if you have to deal with pets, tour assisted living facilities. If your parents are willing to talk, you can help them do this research now and go to the tour with them see the assisted living place. But my best advice in this situation is to do anything in advance that you can before the tragedy strikes. You can help your future self by doing some of the work now while you're under much less pressure and you're not actively grieving. And even doing some of the things without your parents' participation will help you with your peace of mind in knowing that you have some idea about what you need to do when the time comes. Death of a spouse is next on the list of life events that throws your life into a tailspin. When your spouse dies, it starts a reinvention of your life, changes everything about how you live. It's a huge adjustment to life without your loved one and the division of labor that happened in your house. You may have not been in charge of car repairs or bill paying or laundry. It's so difficult to take over the life management skills that you've not done recently, especially when you're so devastated. Again, you can plan for some of this in advance by trying to do the things you're not used to doing. Trade chores for a while and get a feel for what your spouse does most of the time. And if the task is just beyond you, you can make plans for who can help you to do it instead. I have a very clear recollection of my grandmother trying to prepare my grandfather for her passing in their 80s by trying to show him how to use the laundry. He had not washed his own clothes since they were married 70 years ago. And, she suddenly realized that he was going to have to do his own laundry. He didn't even know how to run the machine. Now, I don't know how successful that was because she didn't try to train him until they were into their middle 80s. So I don't know whether it really worked or not, but it's certainly something that you have to consider. You guys have created a division of labor in the household. People do, you do this task, they do that task. And when you are not normally doing something and someone passes away, suddenly you have to pick up all those pieces. And so occasionally trading, like I think of it as cross training and job responsibilities when people in a department do each other's jobs to learn so that if somebody gets out sick or something happens, someone else can step in and pick it up, right? And so you can cross train yourself. Even if you don't do it all the time, you can do it occasionally so you have some idea about what needs to be done.
15% of respondents on our survey have experienced death of a spouse. And that also made me think of Dawn, who is with us today, shared the what was it called? Life Change Index Scale, which is a sort of a self-test talking about with a long list of major events that can happen in your life. Some well, and some positive and some negative and some positive. And the kind of impact they have on your life. We'll go ahead and that's a PDF that we can share on the show notes. But I only mention it now because death of a spouse was the #1 item on that list with the highest impact score of all of the things that they listed.
Of affecting your stress level.
Yeah, your stress level and the likelihood that you will experience, illness or other problems as a result of the stress.
Okay.
Yeah.
Death of the spouse is always #1, right?
That was the top, followed by divorce, separation, jail term, death of a close family member, and so on.
Yeah.
We'll share that because I think that
it's a good list to look
Dawn.
at.
I think a lot of people will find that interesting.
Right. Another unexpected event that you can plan for, or at least think about in advance, is natural disasters. What if you lose the function of the house or the house itself? Lots of people here in Houston got decluttered by Hurricane Harvey because of the unprecedented flooding that took place around the city. It might be time to flood-proof the house if flooding is an issue where you live, or at least filter it against flooding. When the water's washing up into your house, it's too late to move everything. So this is one where you can help yourself immensely by getting the very important things protected now. Find your important papers, identification documents, legal documents, insurance docs, put them in watertight containers and so that they're ready to grab and go in a hurry if you have to evacuate. Get all your precious photos and mementos up on the second floor or in the upper part of the closets on the first floor. Concentrate your decluttering efforts on the low-level cabinets and the closet floors. When my friend Beth she got flooded in Harvey, and they got about 3 feet of water in her house, and every closet, every room had a water line that was 3 feet tall, and everything that was on the floor was destroyed. It was soaked with nasty, smelly water. It had to be all of the clothes that were hanging in the closet, if they were low enough to reach into that 3-foot zone, then the bottom of the garment would just suck water up into the fabric. There was an immense amount of laundry that had to be taken out and washed. It was crazy how many people had to try, and they had to wash it 3 or 4 times to get the smell and the gook out. It was a nightmare. So that's why I say concentrate on the low level stuff. And if you don't want your photographs ruined, they need to be way up in the air on the first floor. If you live on the ground floor, it needs to be up in the air somewhere so that it has to flood, 10 feet to reach the photos instead of 3. And then that horrible flooding event, lots of people had 4 or 5, 6 feet of water in their house, depending on where they were. So Beth was sort of middle of the road in terms of destruction level. And we spent a lot of time washing things that got stuck in that area. And we also threw out a massive amount of stuff. It was like, there's no fixing this. We just have to throw it out. Go through all the stuff you've got packed in those areas and get rid of anything you don't want right now. You're just saving yourself physical labor of hauling it to the curb later. It'll be easier to carry now while it's not waterlogged and smelly. And any other major weather event, if you live in earthquake country, if you live in hurricane country, all of those things might suddenly create an event where you have to deal with something in the house. And so it's good to try to proof your contents against those events. That's my short list of unplanned events. So let's talk about planned events instead next. These are the more fun ones. A marriage, for example, is a very exciting planned event, and it ultimately means 2 households moving together in addition to planning the wedding. Most brides want to plan the party, and they're not interested in planning the living situation that comes after the party. You spend a year planning a weekend's worth of events, so surely you can put some time into planning the whole life that comes after the event. Put some time into deciding what comes to your joint home. If you're moving to a new location together, or if someone is moving in with someone else, don't just expect to crowbar everything in. Both of you should end up giving up half of your stuff to fit, so that some of each person's belongings are in the combined house. Another sort of planned event is a divorce, and where splitting your life apart has a physical counterpart to the emotional part. This is going to be hard if everyone's talking and being reasonable. If you're not talking and it's getting ugly between you, it's going to be much harder. Now you have to separate all your things while you're mad and sad and resentful. It's not really a good environment for decision making. This is one place where picking your battles is important. Is it worth pitching a fit over something small? And try to pay attention to the fact that your feelings of anger and hurt are coloring your response to separating stuff. Remember the great scene in When Harry Met Sally. Billy Crystal says, "It's all wonderful now, but someday you'll be doing 15 rounds about this stupid wagon wheel coffee table." If you're crying and screaming about a coffee table, you might want to stop and ask yourself, how much of this is my being hurt versus actually caring about the coffee table? And I'm sorry that there's no easy way to separate stuff in a divorce. Another happy event that's planned usually is the birth of a child. So suddenly all the ways that you live and all the things that you own changes 100%. The metaphor for this life change is moving from a sports car to the minivan. So many mothers say to me, I was so organized when I lived alone or when we first got married. Well, of course you were, because you were only responsible for you. Now you're responsible for a human being who has no judgment or ability to feed themselves without wearing it. Managing stuff for two functioning adults is a totally different ballgame than managing the space that a child lives in, because it's twice the stuff with only half the skills. That child cannot contribute to its own care and stuff management for some time to come. They bring nothing to the table but cuteness and exceptional destructive capabilities. That requires a new game plan for managing clutter in your home. Plan for that, as well as the new wardrobe and the new, renovating the new baby room. The last on my list of planned events is home renovation, which I think anybody that actually does a remodel must live to regret it over and over again. I can't imagine anybody thinking it's a good idea to do a remodel. And I would think doing a remodel is the last possible, like I would not choose it unless it was the last possible option. Any remodel requires big disruption of the existing home's setup and function. You have to wash dishes in the bathtub, or you have to sleep in the guest room. My friend Karen is getting ready to have her foundation repaired. And so they're going to drill a bunch of holes inside the house and outside the house. And they're going to have to go down the hall into the garage and around through the front door to get into the living room and back to the bathroom. Like they're not going to be able to go down their normal hall to the bathroom. They're gonna have to leave the house and come through the garage and go up to the restroom, like while it's being done. It's super disruptive. Parts of the house are going to be taped off. You may lose the use of the kitchen appliances or the shower. And this can go on for months, depending on what kind of job you're getting done. So don't start any reno without laying out the plan for how you'll meet your basic daily needs until the job's done. Do you have to relocate your clothes and shoes? Where's the pantry going to be? Where can you shower? And can you do this for months? Will this system last for the months that it's going to take for the renovation to happen? The contractor doesn't really care about that part. They just start destroying stuff. So you'll need to organize with a plan in mind for relocating what you need to live every day for the next several weeks or months. And I will always add, when anybody talks to me about reno, the contractor says it's going to take 3 weeks, but he's lying. He's saying that it's going to take 3 weeks if everything works perfectly and there's no disruptions in staff or supplies, or they don't find any extra problems on the job while they're doing it.
Or weather.
Or the weather, exactly. And so their estimate for how long the job is going to take is the best case scenario, which never happens. So you need to take whatever they say and double it or triple it, and then plan for that. Because if you plan for, a 9-week reno job and it actually takes 3 weeks, then you're lucky. But if you plan for a 3-week job and then it takes 9 weeks, then you are suffering. And so better to just assume that there's going to be reasons why that timeline expands way beyond what you think it's going to be, and be prepared for that.
Dawn shared, when I lived in California with a couple, they renovated their kitchen. The stress got to them and they went to their cabin while I stayed in the home.
Right.
And
I think that's a good plan.
And Jane is going through a renovation right now. She said, my home reno continues and it is very hard. The good news is the motivation to move things out. I am living here, and the mess and disruption will be worth it when it's done.
Right. And it usually requires, they destroy a room, whether it's the kitchen or the bathroom or wherever you're getting it done. Whatever's in that room always has to be packed up as if you're moving. You got to get it out of their way. So you create a bunch of boxes of stuff and stack them somewhere. So then you have to live with all those boxes for however long. And then you're going to have to, I get a lot of phone calls when it's time to unpack the boxes again and put stuff away. It's a perfect time for you to, as you're boxing up for the renovation to start, that you go through and just declutter, take things, donate things away instead of packing them. Like get filtered on the way out while you're packing it up, And then you can revisit and filter it again when you're going to go put it back, and use it as an opportunity, because you're going to have to touch it all to shrink the volume, to get rid of stuff that you're not using, and not try to shove it all back in there again. And declutter, who wants to clutter up their brand new, pretty, renovated, freshly painted, freshly built space? So use this as an opportunity. A lot of times people get ready for that job, and the contractor says, I can start next week. And then suddenly there's a fire drill. And so they have to box up everything in a big hurry. If that's true, then, and you don't have any kind of timeline to declutter, I would be taking the boxes that you pack up and going through them one at a time over the 9 weeks or the 3 months or the year and a half that you have your reno job going. I would be filtering those boxes one at a time, slowly over time, so that when it comes time to put it back, it's a much reduced population.
Bridget commented on last week's Tittle about motivation. She said,
Okay.
I discovered that to be so hard on myself did not make my mood and motivation better. I gave myself a kind time out, which eventually got me going again.
There you go, right? Like, we have our own inner dialogues, and they can either be supportive or mean. There's no reason to go with mean. So if you are giving yourself crap, stop it. Tell yourself to shut up. You can tell yourself to shut up just as much as you can tell your spouse to shut up. I mean, you have the right to say, don't talk to me that way, to someone in the house that's doing it, and you can say it to yourself. Like, I don't need to listen to you, that stupid voice in my head that is being mean right now. That's not helping me. I love that. I'm glad that you were able to recognize it and do something about it. We are our own worst critics, right? And we need to not listen to that so often.
Also on the subject of the Tittle, Dawn said, did a step 1 regarding my clothes. Within my color zones, I put the non/short sleeves first and then long sleeves. I got rid of some. Step 2 will be trying things on to make sure everything fits.
There you go. And you did it if you're going to do it in stages, that means that you can spend a couple hours here and then come back again and do stage 2 for a couple hours. And you're breaking the task up into bite-sized pieces, which is great. And so good on you. We'll wait to hear how step 2 went when you come back and tell us about it.
On the subject of death of a parent, spouse, or other loved one, Abby said, note that events can reappear annually, like the death of a loved one. My grandfather would note it on a calendar, like birthdays, and would call or send a note to the one left behind that he was thinking of them at that time. You do have to kind of anticipate that the anniversaries will bring around at least an echo of the disruptions that you went through in your life at the time of the original loss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've been watching some Korean dramas lately, and on Netflix, and they have a cultural process of remembering the anniversary of the death and doing a memorial service event every year. They put food out, and they come together and bow and do their processes that are around honoring the person who's died. And I think it's interesting that they remember the death date just like they remember the birth date. Mm-hmm. And it's it's a moment of honoring that emotion is still there a year later, the second year, the third year. I think we don't make a lot of space for that in Western culture. We sort of assume that the person is gone and we shouldn't worry about it anymore. And it makes it hard for those of us who have the anniversary go by and have emotional responses to it. And that was certainly true for me after my mother died. And I can do those anniversaries now that it's been several years. But in the first few years were very hard for me to go past her birthday and Mother's Day and Christmas and all those things. And I think we don't give ourselves enough space to honor that those anniversaries are disruptive emotionally, and they're going to be disruptive to our ability to do other stuff, to stay focused and keep working and keep organizing or not. And it gets in the way for sure.
Marcy mentioned serious illness of a pet as another thing that can be a big disruption.
illness of anything, it takes 100% of focus and away from everything else. And somebody being ill, it just requires, there's a reason why there's a hospital, right? Like taking care of somebody is a full-time job if they have a serious illness. And it's, if you are yourself ill, like, we've all had some version of experience with COVID, most of us now, and how disruptive that 3 weeks of being sick and then trying to get our energy back afterwards. It's been such a, it's been a common experience for a whole lot of the population on the planet, is what I'm saying. And we've all had to deal with that complete shutdown of our ability to do our normal lives. And that's what it's like when somebody has a real serious illness. It just disrupts everything else and takes all of the attention to dealing with that. And as it should, you gotta put your energy into getting better and healing, and someone needs to be there to do stuff for you while you can. And it means you can't declutter anything else. You can't be doing your regular life events.
Charity, who's with us on Facebook, said, have lived through 4 renovations. We always ended up getting rid of stuff when resettling into the new space.
4 renovations. That sounds like torture to me.
It's brutal.
Why would you do that? But I've had people say to me, oh, I love renos. I think it's so much fun. The end result is like, well, I'm glad that you can feel positive about it. That's excellent. Most of my clients are like, why? In the middle, they're like, why did we do this? It's just it's a very painful thing to do, to have a bunch of stuff torn up in the space where you live every day.
Some people just gobble that up because they enjoy the change and the opportunity to shop for new appliances, new colors, new window treatments, whatever. But I suspect that the people who really enjoy it are probably, there's not that much overlap between that set and people who are chronically struggling with clutter, because clutter complicates the process so much and adds layers of extra planning and difficulty
and extra work for the homeowners, for sure.
Dawn shared death of a parent. She said, thankfully, my brother from another state, the power of attorney, was able to take care of the estate sale years before mom passed, and while she was 200 miles away, helped a lot for when her passing actually happened 3 years later.
Yeah, sometimes you can't get cooperation around that, but if your parent has been moved into assisted living, that frees up their living space to be dealt with while everybody's still alive, and that certainly makes it less of an emotional burden to take down your parents' house than doing it afterwards. We all have to do some version of that, and I had to do that with the pets too, having to adopt pets away after Susan died, my friend Susan, who died, and she had 7 animals, and I had to figure out how to adopt them all out. And it was quite a chore. There's lots to deal with when you have to pick up the pieces of somebody's life.
Marcy said, I had 4 feet of sewer backup in my basement apartment many years ago. Not fun.
That's awful. Oh my God.
That's worse than having the bayou in your house.
Yeah, that was a little, that's sort of, that's like shades of Hurricane Harvey in your basement.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. What a nightmare. And of course, whatever was in the basement and, 4 feet from off the floor, all got destroyed probably. What a nightmare.
Marcia said, profound how much of this is about being hurt.
Being hurt disrupts your focus and your ability to work on something. And it's why, when people tell me their stories, when I go to their house and they're telling me why the house fell apart, it's no surprise to me that if you have had a divorce or a death, or, you moved in together, or you got married, or all of these events, when people tell me, oh, it fell apart because, I'm like, of course it did. That you had way too many other things to do. Decluttering, managing the stuff falls to the bottom of the list when all these life events happen, because there's so much more important things going on. And so it never surprises me, and I never have any judgment about it. It's like, yeah, you're just reacting to life. And so if you're calling me to come and help you, it's because you've managed to sort of calm down from whatever the life event was, or you're in a moment where you can pause and think about it, and and get back to the decluttering. It's like, that's fine. If you've gotten to a place where you can turn around and now go and deal with the decluttering, let's work on it. And it's wonderful. And those times will come where you have to kick decluttering the house and being organized to the bottom of the list and ignore it for a while you do stuff that's more important. And just know that you'll have to circle back again and pick it up. But, by the time you circle back and pick it up, hopefully that means that things have calmed down and you're in a better place that you can put it back on the list.
Jane suggests that your factor of 3 was not enough and says multiply what the contractor says by at least 10.
Yeah. I mean, when I talk to homeowners about that, my advice is always whatever they say, multiply by 3 at least. And then people look at me and they're like, no. Yes. They don't want to admit it. They don't want to hear it. They look at me like, you're making that up. I'm like, no, I'm not. And, sometimes they don't take my advice to heart. And, what are you going to do? Right? Like, you just got to roll with it. And they come back to me later and go, oh, you were right. Oh, it was really a factor of 5. Oh, it was, yeah. Yeah, it's contractors are notorious for promising the moon in order to get the job and assuming that all things are perfect and running smoothly. But I will tell you that, not all contractors are people that I would consider really organized or good at task management or time management. So if, they don't manage themselves very well and they don't manage their crews very well, then you are affected by their great house renovating skills and not having good project management skills. And so that's always going to, affect how well it goes. This also how good your contractor is at coordinating his teams and his work.
Naomi shared the biggest disruption from her renovation. It created a gap in the outside wall and the mice moved in.
Oh, ew. That's not fun.
That's something we probably could have put on the list of major life events too. It's just
invasion,
infestation of any kind. Yeah.
Oh yeah, because somebody mentioned bed bugs, right? Like bed bugs destroys everything. Like that, you have to really start throwing stuff away after that.
Jane said a home remodel is like having a baby. After the fact, it's worth it. I'm seniorizing my place. It's been a trying time, but worth it as each phase is completed.
Oh yeah, like adding, making the doorways wider and clearing the pathways and putting handrails in places and that kind of stuff. Oh, Vivian says, what's that thing in the background? It's a milestone. It's a marker.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell from the background. So there's a stone and sitting on a base along the side of a road. Yeah.
This is a fun comment from Samudra. She says, 25 years ago, I was seriously dating a master builder. He took me to a dinner party at the home of a doctor for whom he'd done a home remodeling. As we sat around, someone asked if we knew why Jesus was born in a stable. Because Joseph and Mary belonged to an HMO, was the punchline of the joke. After we left, I said I thought it was because Joseph was a carpenter, and everyone knows the carpenter's home is always the last finished. Everyone but my boyfriend laughed even harder.
Oh, Samudra. That's good. That's very good.
Marcia expanded on her comment. She may have hit send too soon before I read her comment before. So let me read her updated, longer comment.
Okay.
Profound. How much of this is about being hurt versus how much does this apply to the item? Seems like this could be filter question for an item retained after other life changes, death of loved one, house fire or flood or tornado, some other kind of loss.
Yeah.
So how much is about the hurt and how much is the reality of what the item means to you?
Mm-hmm. And how you decide between the two. And hurt is at the basis of a whole lot of the things that we cling to, right? you keep the stuff that is sentimental to you because your mother is gone, and that is something that's hurtful to you. You have trouble decluttering the cat stuff in the car because the cat has passed away, and it's hard to face
that pain.
You face that pain. Exactly. And so there is a whole lot about processing your own pain and suffering that affects your ability to choose. It's true. We probably should talk about our topic and the tittle.
All right, let's talk about next week.
Okay.
We'll be back at our usual time next week, which is Tuesday, December 13th at noon US Central Time, live in Zoom and streaming on Facebook. We're going to do another Ask Us Anything episode. We're going to talk about what your clutter is telling you, my favorite things, and decluttering shared workspaces. Join us on December 13th for Ask Us Anything, favorite things, shared workspaces, listen to your clutter.
The tittle this week is called Big Events, Big Changes. This week's assignment is to think about major events in your life that can change your clutter landscape. Spend a few moments thinking or writing about life milestones that you've lived through, that you're going through now, or that you might reasonably expect to experience in the coming years. Reflect on the effects of these big events on the environment of your home, which have made an impact or would be likely to make an impact on your volume of stuff or your ability or willingness to deal with your clutter. For an experience that has made or will make a large impact, go and do some research on resources that might help you manage the situation in question. For example, if you anticipate having to care for an elderly parent in your home, you might take some time to learn about assistive devices and equipment. And let me note here, we recognize that we've been talking about big life-changing experiences, and we're not expecting you to make a comprehensive long-term plans in response to this tittle. We only want to get you thinking about the effects these events have on your life and dip your toe in the water of ways to manage or mitigate the changes that they bring. And let's see what you have to say about it next week.
Dawn shared, everyone needs to do what they're comfortable with. On the first anniversary of my dad's passing, my mom and DH went to one of his favorite restaurants. For me, it's too much to remember every year.
Mm-hmm.
And Samudra shared, I grieve so hard for Mama, I almost forgot to grieve for Daddy. Deborah said, being alone for holidays is awful too. My friend is going through a divorce and all three of her kids live in different cities and won't be with her for New Year's Eve. For the first time in her life, I was able to create my own tribe and traditions.
That's wonderful. It does create, having those experiences does create an opportunity for you to reach out to your network and tap into the support that you have near you to try to help you cope.
Yeah, and actually that that list that Dawn shared that we're going to post on the show notes, the holidays coming is one of those traumatic events.
Stressors.
It's not a huge one. It's has a fairly small value attached to it, but it adds to your stress. So if you've already got these 9 things you're coping with this year, and
exactly,
then the holidays come too, it might be the thing that sort of pushes you over the edge.
Depending on whether you're the host or not. Does everybody come to your house for Christmas? Does everybody come to your house for Thanksgiving? Like, if you're the hostess that has to put on the big event for the big group of people, you're the one that has the most stress for sure.
March says, haha, on contractors, 7 weeks I waited for carport to be fixed of leaks. As we are here, they just showed up.
Oh.
Dud.
Oh man. Yeah, there's so many home renovation horror stories out there. It is a process that you have to come into it with a flexible attitude and an ability to remind yourself this too will pass. I can live with this. It's not going to go perfect, and I can be okay with that. Being flexible in this moment is going to be your easiest way to get through a renovation project.
Bridget asked, what is an HMO? And since we do have a lot of international viewers and listeners, we'll explain that's a health management organization, which is one of the many bizarre phenomena in the U.S. healthcare system.
Insurance market, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's part of our goobery insurance.
It's one of the many things that stand between us and getting decent, affordable healthcare in this country.
Yes.
Linda shared, I found having space between me and the pain, loss of a loved one, home fire, whatever name the pain has helped me be more willing to release things that made it through the first or second or third decluttering pass.
So you're saying that by letting some time go by and having that distance between experiencing the event and looking at the object, it's easier for you farther down the road. And yes, of course it would be. And great that you have, acknowledged that you circle back more than once, because right after an event, you're going to make different decisions than you will 4 years later after the event. And so you can sort of let go of stuff in layers. So we've talked about that a million times, right? The idea that, the first pass is the easy stuff and you resist on some things. But then the second or the third or the fourth path, you're able to pick up the object the third time and go, okay, now I'm ready to let this one go. This is not, I kept it in when I was more emotional about this, but now I can look at this with a little more dispassionately and make a different choice. And so making more than one pass as the distance slides between when you're experiencing the event and when you're looking at the stuff will make it easier for you to let go of some of the things. It's absolutely true.
Naomi shared, I live on the 5th floor of a building at the top of a relatively deep river valley, so zero chance of flooding short of the collapse of the tectonic plates. But there have been 3 major incidents in 10 years of water damage from plumbing failures in floors above in other apartments, not mine. So it's still a good idea to put key documents in a waterproof container.
Yeah, that's really right. I mean, I should have thought about that because, we have plumbings in our houses, and they're in the walls and in the ceiling and between floors. And we don't think about somebody overflows the bath on the 2nd floor and it destroys all of the contents and walls down underneath it. That happens a lot. I was just working in an office over the weekend, and they had some kind of water cooler on one wall and an inner office on the other side. The water cooler broke or leaked or something happened so that the water went to the carpet, and it soaked and rolled on the foundation and went into another office on the other side. And so there was furniture and wall damage on the other side of the wall from where this incident took place. And so you never know where the water's going to go. And keeping that in mind is a good idea, keeping that stuff off the floor. And then there was the freeze, and Harvey, and not Harvey, but we had the winter freeze,
storm,
where everything froze completely, and then pipes burst under that ice stress, and then when it thawed, the water started pouring in my bedroom. So you never know what pipes, where they are, and where they're going to leak.
If you're watching this on YouTube, we'd love for you to join us live. To get notifications about upcoming events, we invite you to join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. You can also follow us on Facebook by visiting cfhou.com/Facebook, or join our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe. We love to hear from you, so please send us your questions, comments, topic suggestions on YouTube, Facebook, or anywhere else that you find us. You can always reach us through our website at clutterfairyhouston.com.
Thanks everybody for joining us today. I get such a kick out of our Vanna moment where I put my signs up like Vanna White from what's the show? What show is Vanna on? I forget.
Wheel of Fortune?
Thank you.
Wheel of Fortune? Okay.
Wheel of Fortune, probably, yeah. Thanks everybody for coming. I appreciate it. And we will talk to you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.